Are you a console gamer thinking about getting into PC gaming? Maybe you've always wanted to try gaming on a PC, but you've been apprehensive about it. Here are some pros and cons of PC gaming to help you decide. First, we'll start off with some pros. Mods. You can very easily mod PC games. These mods could be things like UI enhancements. You can get some high definition assets for older games, or you can even get mods that change out the assets for games to just make it look completely different. But these are all things that are easily doable on PC. Backwards compatibility. So with PC gaming, backwards compatibility isn't really a thing, right? So if it works for PC, it works for PC. You can play a game that was released in 2000 on a PC just fine, but you can't do the same thing necessarily with a console. If you're on console, you're gonna have to find a game that is backwards compatible, may have had a remake done, or is played through emulation through the backwards compatibility that certain consoles have. This means that playing that back catalog of games that you may not have played because you were too young or just not into gaming at the time is quite as easy on a console as it is on PC. You might have to buy some older consoles themselves, or be able to borrow from a friend, or rely on those remakes that console developers like to do. Another pro to PC gaming is that there are a lot more settings that you can mess with on PCs than there are on consoles. You can change things like the water physics, you can change the resolution that the game is rendering at, you can change the different shadows. There's a lot of different settings you can change on PC, while on console, you kind of just get what you get. Lately, with modern games, a lot of times you get the option for a high fidelity mode or quality mode, or versus a frames per second performance mode. And that's the extent of the options that you'll have with a console. But on PC, depending on the game, you can change pretty much every single setting to get the game running just the way you need it to get the performance you want out of the hardware that you have. If you have a top of the line system, you might be able to just go max settings on everything. But if you're playing on a more budget conscious system or an older system, you have the ability to change a bunch of those settings to get the game running just the way you want it to. Emulation. Contrary to what people may think, the act of emulating a game in itself is not illegal. Having emulators is not illegal. An emulator is simply a piece of software that simulates or emulates a piece of hardware the way it would have ran. Emulation is legal as long as you are backing up your own games and ripping your own ROMs. The process of backing up your own ROMs can be quite cumbersome, but the act of emulating and getting ROMs legally is not illegal. But if you do go through the process of ripping your own games so that you have a legal copy of it for a backup as a ROM, then there's nothing illegal about playing it on a computer versus the original hardware. Emulation is used all over the gaming space. If you look at the Nintendo Switch Online catalog of NES, SNES games, those are simply running emulation on a Switch. But with emulation, you may be able to play some of those old games that you have hard copies of that you haven't played in a long time. Refresh rates. So with console gaming, depending on the TV that you have, you can get up to 120 Hertz. Most TVs out there are 60 Hertz, but you do have a lot of TVs nowadays that are also 120 Hertz. Console makers know that you're going to connect to either a 60 Hertz or 120 Hertz TV, and so that's the max performance you get from those consoles. Meanwhile, with a PC, there's monitors that are 120 Hertz, 60 Hertz, 144 Hertz, 165 Hertz, 240 Hertz, 360 Hertz, even 480 Hertz. So depending on the type of monitor you want and the resolution you want to play on, there's a lot more variety there and options out there for you. You may be a gamer who likes to play the latest Call of Duty and wants to play on a 1080p screen with 480 Hertz refresh rate. Or you might be a guy who just likes the cinematic experience of that console experience and want to play at 4K 120 Hertz, 4K 165 Hertz. Or if the game is very demanding, you might have to play the game at 4K 60 Hertz. But with the PC, you have the option to choose which resolution and refresh rate you're going to play at, as long as you have the monitor and the hardware that supports it, versus a console where you're stuck to either 60 or 120 Hertz. Widescreen. If you want that immersive experience, you can get a widescreen monitor that'll allow you to play at 21:9 or 32:9 resolutions. These are resolutions that are not supported by consoles, but with a PC, you can get that immersive experience with even more field of view and get the wider screen experience. Not all games will support the 21:9 or 32:9 resolutions, the widescreen resolutions, but you also have a lot of games that do, like Call of Duty, the Assassin's Creeds. Even on PC, not all the games will support that 21:9 resolution, but a lot of times there are mods out there that can get the game to support that resolution, but that's not always possible. But without having a PC, you won't even have the option to play widescreen on the games that do support widescreen. With a PC, you can have your choice of input device. you can use a mouse and keyboard or a controller. Just because you're on PC doesn't mean you have to play mouse and keyboard. You can actually play with a controller just as easily as you can with mouse and keyboard, depending on the game. There are games that I'll play with mouse and keyboard because it's just easier for me, but if I'm playing an old school Japanese RPG or some other games that are menu heavy or PlateUp, for example, I will play it with a controller as opposed to mouse and keyboard just because it's easier to control. But you have the option with the PC of playing with mouse and keyboard or a controller. Another advantage to PC gaming is you get Xbox exclusives on day one. So Xbox has been doing it where they will release their exclusive games on PC and Xbox on day one. So you don't even need to have an Xbox Series X or S in order to play these games on day one. For example, Starfield. Starfield came out on PC the same day it did on the Xbox Series. If you like some of the games that are on PlayStation, a lot of the timed exclusives that developers have with PlayStation end up being on PC and PlayStation because they don't consider the PC its own console. For example, Stray came out last year for the PlayStation and PC, but just recently came out for the Xbox Series. If you had a PC, you could play Stray at the same time that people were playing it on PlayStation. Now, this doesn't apply for all of the PlayStation exclusives, specifically the PlayStation first-party exclusives such as Ratchet & Clank and Spider-Man. For these first-party PlayStation games, they do like to hold on to their exclusives to their PlayStation ecosystem until much later when they decide to release it for PC. But if you're a patient gamer and you just want that gaming experience eventually, these games have been making it to PC. Games like Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, Death Stranding, Uncharted 4, Spider-Man, Sackboy, Final Fantasy VII Remake, which are first-party Sony PlayStation games that are now on PC. So just because you have a PC doesn't mean you can't play those games. The final pro for having a computer, a PC versus a console, is that it is not just a console. You can use your PC to do schoolwork, actual work, surf the internet, edit videos, and there's so many more things you can do with a computer other than just play games. Even if the goal is to have a gaming computer, the fact that it can do so much more than just be a gaming device makes it very versatile. Before we get to the cons, if you like this video, consider subscribing down below. Without further ado, the cons. The first con of PC gaming is the cost of the system itself. The price of a PC will depend on the level of hardware you want and your budget. You can build a budget gaming system for $400, or you can build a monster PC for $4,000, or anywhere in between there. But that is typically going to be more than your console costs, especially if you are looking for a computer that has the commensurate performance of one of the current gen consoles. You're going to have to spend a bit more. But even with a $400 PC, you can still play most of the popular games that you want. You might just have to turn down some of those settings or play at a lower resolution. However, let's say you don't have the budget now, but you know you will later. You can continue to upgrade a PC as you go, contrary to a console where the system is what it is unless you buy the next version, the PS5 Pro or the Xbox Series X Pro or whatnot that might come out in the future. Getting a PS5 or an Xbox Series can be cheaper at that $500 price point, but as the farther away we get from the launch of those consoles, the better performance relative to those consoles you'll get with that same $500 spent on a PC. Down in the description, I'll have a couple links to show you what a non-budget build would look like versus maybe like $1,000 build, just to give you an idea. Next con of PC gaming is the debate of whether you build your own or buy pre-built. Building a computer isn't hard. It's like adult Legos, but you do need to know what kind of parts you need to buy, and you're gonna have to do a little research to figure out how to put the system all together. Building a PC can actually be pretty fun, but if it's not something that you want to do, then you can buy a pre-built. The problem with a pre-built is a lot of times they go cheaper on certain pieces of hardware, like the motherboard or the power supply, and so it might not be as upgradable in the future, and they typically cost more than if you bought all the pieces yourself. However, if you don't want to build your own computer, then this is a way for you to get into PC gaming without having to learn any of that information. Another con of PC gaming is the fact that you might have to tinker to get the games running just right. Because games for PC have to deal with a lot of different levels of hardware versus a console, which is just a plug-and-play device, there are settings and some tinkering that you might have to do to get the game to run just right or get the performance that you want out of it. You're gonna have to mess with the resolution and be willing to mess with the settings a little bit to get exactly what you want performance-wise out of the device. Let's say you're playing a more demanding game and you start playing it and you notice you're getting frame stutters and it's only running at like 40 frames per second, you might have to drop some of those settings down to get it running at your desired refresh rate, whether that's 60 or 120. Another disadvantage of PC gaming is the PC ports. So lately, a lot of developers have been kind of lazy with their PC ports and have been issuing PC ports that have been not very well optimized. On top of that, a lot of games have been released with a lot of bugs. Now these bugs do often get fixed via patches, but that can be frustrating if you're just trying to play a game immediately. Speaking to the bugs though, those are not unique to PC gaming, and those happen on console games these days too. Another disadvantage to PC gaming is what I kind of mentioned before, is the Sony PlayStation first-party games. Those games do not seem to come out onto PC for a couple years after their release. So if those are the games that you play, and pretty much the only games you play, like Horizon Forbidden West or the new Spider-Man that's coming out, then maybe getting a PlayStation might be worth it for you. Another con of PC gaming is widescreen. While a lot of PC games do allow you to play in widescreen, not all games support widescreen easily. You might have to install some mods or do some tinkering to get widescreen to work just right. However, this con can be disregarded if you decide you want to just play on a 16:9 monitor or a TV. Another con to PC gaming is the fact that with a PC, you're going to need peripherals. You're going to need at least a keyboard and mouse to navigate the operating system, unless you buy a pre-built, in which case most pre-builts will come with at least a keyboard and mouse. You also need to buy a monitor unless you plan on playing on the TV, which is also a good option. If you don't plan on playing on TV, you may also need either speakers or a headset, depending on the type of game you're playing, so you can actually hear the game. And the final con that I'll talk about in this video is physical media. If you're one of the gamers who still enjoys collecting the physical copies of games, PCs have gone away from physical copies of games. Most computers nowadays don't even come with a disk drive. So if you are someone who likes to collect physical games, that's not really an option anymore with PC gaming. With PC gaming, you're not going to buy physical media. You're going to end up buying the game digitally, with the most popular storefront being Steam. Hopefully this video gives you some things to consider if you're thinking about getting into PC gaming. Share your experiences down in the comments below. Are you already a PC gamer? Have you been thinking about getting into PC games? Do you have any other pros or cons to add? And are you thinking about building a PC now that we've gone over some of the pros and cons? I personally play console and PC. If a game comes out on a console and PC, I'll play it on PC every time. There are games that I still have my consoles for because I like to play those Sony first-party exclusives and the Nintendo Switch games. But hopefully you enjoyed that pros and cons list, and just let me know what you guys think in the comments down below.